I'm Carol Best, and I'm just going to step through the process that I've kind of streamlined from the So Yeah Quilting guys. Their YouTube tutorial has been sent out to most of you, but I'll just show you how I'm doing it. I've kind of shortened up some of their steps. So I have a just a piece of fabric here. I'm going to cut it at 14 inches long. It's, just a yard of fabric folded 4 times. So I'm going to cut it at 14 inches using my grid on my cutting mat. And I'll just cut that, get that out of the way. Now, the pattern calls for 8 inches, but because I have this width of fabric, I'm going to actually make mine 9 inches wide. That allows me to use this fabric up as much as possible. It also makes the mask just a little bit wider, which is preferred. So I'm just going to cut it at 9 inches here. And if I do this, then I have 4 pieces of fabric all ready to be made up in a mask. I'm going to go ahead and go to my sewing machine. I'll see you over there. All right, the next step is to go ahead and fold it in half. So now you have 7 inches by 9 inches. And I'm just going to go ahead and make my seam. It doesn't have to be any particular width. I'm just putting it in my needle in the center and the width of my foot. This is going to allow me to tuck in the wire nose piece for this mask. So let's just go ahead and get this sewn. All right, so normally I would go ahead and make just chain stitch a bunch of these, and I'll work 10 at a time just so the process goes a little bit faster. But for my video, I'm just going to show you how to do 1 at a time, and I'll put these other pieces of fabric to the side. All right, now that we've got the seam done, all we need to do is we need to flatten or press out the seam. So you can either I like folding it to the center, it's just easier. You can either finger press it or take it to the iron and press it. So once that is pressed, go ahead and flip your mask right side out. And bring this seam right up on top and go ahead and give that a good pressing with your iron. We now have the seam pressed at the top. The next thing we're going to do is put in a wire piece for the bridge of the nose of the person wearing it. This allows them to bend it to their nose and making it closer fitting mask. Now there are several different options that you can use for this. I originally was using wire ties. They used to be with bread, loaves of bread. We don't get that anymore around here, but this is from a group of garbage bags that we have. So I didn't have a ton of these, so I had to come up with another option. And I went to my local store, found some floral wire, and it's very thin, so I wound up doing two layers of this, and then wound up wrapping it with floral tape. This happens to be waterproof, so when this mask gets re-washed, or when it gets washed, it can withstand that. I believe it will. I'm hoping it will. The length of it is 3.5 inches. That's approximately the same size as the M24 masks.
N95.
See, I knew I would be corrected. N95. All right. So anyway, it allows good coverage to anybody that might be wearing it. So that's why the 3.5 inches was selected. Once you have this all ready, we're going to go ahead and tuck this piece. We're going to fit that right on top of the seam allowance. So let me just work on that. And you have to, unfortunately, the camera can't get right in there, but I tucked it right underneath that seam allowance, and I now can feel with my finger that it is sitting right here. Now, it's approximately, it seems to be pretty much right in the center. Do the best you can with getting it in the center. Now, I will go ahead and put a pin right here so I know where to start, and a pin here so I know where to end. For added security, if you're going to do a chain of these, I would go ahead and either put a pin right here, or you can of course use one of the binder clips and to hold on to that so it doesn't get out of place. All right, let's go to the machine, and I'm actually going to just be sewing a U-shape casing for this. And the reason I want to make sure it's a U-shape is that I don't want it shifting right or left. I want it to stay right in place. So I'll go ahead and start right here. And I'm going to want to back stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my work, and I'll go ahead and stitch the casing. You just want to make sure you're not getting too close to that wire, because you do not want to sew on top of it or your needle may break. I'm going to back stitch, and that gives me a very nice pliable piece for the bridge of the nose. But I would go ahead and mark this fabric at the increments that the pattern says, but because of this particular fabric, I can't really see many of the marking pens that I have. So I do need to actually use pins. Now, if you go to the pattern, it says to mark So I just come up here and eyeball 1.5, 2.5. You start to memorize these after you've made several masks. 3 inches, 4, 4.5, and 5.5. Now make sure you don't turn your work, or else your pins are going to be different if you flip it and try to pin this side. So go ahead and do this side. 1.5, 2.5, 3, 4, 4.5, and 5.5. So now you can pick this up. The 5.5 is going to be on the top where your nose piece is. So at this point you can pick this up. The first 2 pins come together and then you fold that up towards the nose piece, so to the top of the mask. You can take one of these pins and pin it into place. Get rid of that second one. Take the next 2 pins, match them together, pinch, and put that fold to the top, or to the left hand side if you're thinking of it that way. Get rid of one and go ahead and pin it. Take the next 2, match them, pinch and fold to the left, and go ahead and pin that, and go ahead and get rid of that second one. We can go ahead and turn this now, so we can pinch or match, pinch, and fold to the top. Do you see how this is folded to the, now it's to the right hand side? As long as your 2 folds are matching, so they're both this way, that's what we're trying to go for. So go to the next 2, match, pinch, and fold to the top. Next 2, match, pinch, and fold to the right hand side, or to the top of the mask, however you want to think of that. And we're done. So now I'm going to take it to my, it looks really uncumbersome. I know the pattern has you ironing all of these before you start pleating it, but I'm thinking, okay, I can really go like this and come to my ironing board, and iron both the top and the bottom, and that's all taken care of. So I'm going to go ahead and iron this, and I'll be right back. All right, so I've ironed both the top and the bottom. That gives you a nice crease for both sides, or nice pleats. So I'm going to go ahead and I need to tack down my pleats, and then I need to add my elastic to both sides. So I've taken my elastic. I was out of 1/4 inch elastic, and my local store was as well. So the 3/8 inch is fine. It's still narrow enough that we can go ahead and use that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to pin this in place, and when I'm chain stitching, I do each one of these steps in groups of 10. So I don't make one complete mask and then make the next complete mask. I will do each step in bulk, if you will. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that together, and pin the next side. The last time I made this last group, instead of pins, I was using the little clips that we all have seen out in the stores. It keeps me from actually pinning or poking myself. So I do like those as well, but figured everybody, most all quilters have pins. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch all of this down. Now with this, I just put my needle all the way to the right hand side, and I'll go ahead and stitch this down, and I'll backtrack on the elastic pieces to make sure that they're tacked down nicely. And I'll just go ahead and get that done. All right, the last step we need to do is to put on our little binding pieces to cover up the raw edges of our mask. The pattern calls for a 6-inch length of fabric for that. It's 2 inches wide. I folded it and ironed it, so it's just like a normal binding piece. But I cut mine down to 5 inches, and I noticed that in the tutorial he actually was trimming off the excess fabric. I figure if I'm just going to go ahead and make all of them the same size, I'll trim my binding pieces to the size that I need. So I find that 5 inches is plenty long, and we'll just go ahead and show you. So raw edges to raw edges of the mask, go ahead and line it up so it's fairly centered. You can go ahead and use either a pin or a binding clip. And I'll do this one too as long as I'm here. Again, when I'm working with a group of 10, I'll have these all ready just to go to chain stitch down, so we can get through more of them a little faster. So we start off with just folding that down to the back, bringing it to your machine, and again, I am since I just stitched the mask with my needle all the way to the right, I have to come back to the left a little bit. So I usually go back a couple spaces just so it covers up that seam line that I just did with stitching down the pleats and the elastic. Just need to be on the left hand side of that seam. All right, so here I go. I'm gonna go ahead and tack that down, and then unlike quilting, you do need to kind of give that a reinforcement tack at the beginning and the end. Now I'm going to go ahead and fold this down to the back, hold that in place, and stitch to the end, making sure that this is even to the side. There we go. And do a little back stitching. Go ahead and do the same with this side, and I'll be right back and show you how we finish this up. All right, so here we are. We've sewn that on top. We've folded our tabs to the back, and now we're just going to flip this out, or kind of get this binding flipped over. I find it easier to pull on that end piece. Kind of gives you a nice crisp edge there. And at this point, I would go ahead and take it to the iron. I fold it over, making sure that the elastic is out of that area. I could pin this if I'd like. Let's go ahead and pin this for now. The nice thing about these particular pins is that they are heat resistant, so I can go ahead and iron them and have them in place when I start to stitch those down. Okay, I'll do the same with this side. And flip, tug, give that a little crease with your finger, and flip it over, leaving the elastic up. These little tabs like to pull to show, so I just kind of tuck them as much as I can. And there we are. So I'll go ahead and hit that with the iron. I can take that pin out now that it's all in place. For this one, I put the foot on the binding, and I'll go all the way over to the left-hand side. Well, maybe not quite all the way, or else you might pop off that that left edge. It gets kind of bulky up here, so hopefully your machine doesn't have a problem with multiple layers. The stiletto helps with this part, keeping it all put together. So back tacking is preferred here. Don't want to run over that pin. Make sure we tidy that up. Get all our threads taken care of. Pull my pin. And we'll take care of those threads. Now this mask is all ready for the next or for the professional that or organization that needs it. You can pop that out. They can form the metal piece to their nose, and that is as complicated as that needs to be. If you're in the Rochester Olmsted area, just let me know when you want to drop them off. I'll have a little drop site outside of my home for them, and the county coordinator will come pick them up and disperse them as need be. If you're not in this area, see if your area needs masks. They are now CDC approved. Just 100% cotton is all you need, and a little elastic, a little bit of wire, and a little bit of time will help those that are working outside. Let's get going.